Hi, my name's Eric, and I'll be reading you selections from the e-edition of today's Cape Cod Times. It's Christmas Eve, December 24th of 2025. We'll start with the weather, as we always do. Hope you're having a good holiday season as it leads into the holiday tomorrow, Christmas. Across the Cape and Islands today, windy with times of clouds and sun. High of 39 expected, a low of 27 in the overnight, and mostly cloudy. On Christmas Day itself, mostly cloudy, high of 40, a low of 31. On Friday, periods of snow and rain, high of 39, a low of 31. On Saturday, a thick cloud cover comes in, 39 the expected high, 31 the expected low. And on Sunday, cloudy becoming rainy, high of 45, low of 31. The sun will rise at 7:06 a.m. today. It will set at 4:16 p.m. We'll have 9 hours and 10 minutes of daylight. The moon will rise at 10:12 a.m. It will set at 8:52 p.m. Heading to the front of the paper where they used to keep the lottery results, but they don't anymore because, well, they go to press too early to give those to you. So we will go to masslottery.com so we can give you those latest results. If you ask for them, you certainly deserve them. For the numbers game, in the midday drawing of Tuesday, December 23rd, the results were 1902. Again, yesterday's midday drawing numbers game results, 1902. In the evening drawing last night, the results were 5, 4, 6, 9. Again, last night's evening drawing of the numbers game results, 5, 4, 6, 9. Good luck to all who play. Remember us if you win. From the cover of the Cape Cod Times for today, the headline above the fold, if there was such a thing in a digital newspaper, everybody loves a love story. After 27-year engagement, the sandwich couple finally ties the knot, by Desiree Nickfarjum. One winter day, while walking home from kindergarten in the 1950s, Karen Martino Maharis was hit by a snowball. The culprit, a young boy named Bill Maharis, was a friend of her brother Roger. Little did they know that nearly 70 years later, the two would be getting married. Everybody loves a love story, Bill Maharis said by phone on November 14th, just 3 weeks after he and Karen eloped. The couple live in Sandwich. The two have known each other since grade school back in Melrose, and by the time Karen joined their high school, her brother made it clear to his friends that no one was to date his sister. In high school, he kind of turned into this really good-looking guy, but then he started teasing me, Karen said during the phone interview. That was as bad as the snowballs. The teasing was a misfortune on my part because I had nothing else to do. I couldn't date her, Bill said. On October 24th, the two finally tied the knot 27 years after Bill proposed. Bill and Karen didn't stay in touch after high school, though he was always friends with her brother. When he was 20 years old, Bill got married and had a daughter. Sadly, he was widowed just 8 years later. Many years later, Bill had 2 more daughters. Karen also married in her early 20s and had 2 daughters, though she ended up getting divorced. She was married once more after that, but when it ended, she decided to swear off men completely. Her advice to anyone looking for love, just forget about it. It'll happen easier if you're not looking, she said. After her second marriage ended, Karen moved back to Melrose where she opened an antique store. Every night, after I closed the store, I'd go to the YMCA where I worked out, and then across the street to my favorite restaurant, Turner's, she said. And then suddenly Bill walked in. I looked up and there was Karen, Bill said. He called out to her across the restaurant with a nickname he used to call her brother, Masty. Karen's maiden name is Mastrorillo. Bill asked her out on a date which took place only a few days later, and they've been together ever since. All we had to do was say one word, and we both knew exactly what the other person was talking about, Karen said. The years had changed both of them, perhaps for the better. It was wonderful. He wasn't throwing snowballs or teasing me any longer, said Karen. The only thing they had to figure out was how to tell Karen's brother, since he was clear he didn't want his friend dating his sister. After 50 years, though, enough time had gone by, as Bill calls it, statute of limitations. It felt like love at first sight. It was a real short time before we knew we just wanted to be together. Our only regret is we didn't get together earlier, Bill said. About 27 years ago, Karen received an engagement ring from Bill, and the two decided it was finally the right time to get married. Bill and Karen now live between Cape Cod and Florida. They're boaters. Though Karen can't swim, she's a great first mate, Bill said. The couple also enjoys golfing together. He actually taught. Nobody else would ever have the patience to do that, but he did, said Karen. Neighbors Fund support eases family's bill after surgery. After open heart surgery, a 76-year-old grandfather was cleared only for light work. Once the primary provider for his household, his reduced hours and ongoing medical copays left the family behind on their mortgage, facing a utility shutoff. At the same time, he and his wife are raising their 2 grandchildren in Yarmouth. The stress of medical recovery and mounting bills weighed heavily, threatening the stability of the entire household. With support from the Neighbors Fund, they were able to pay the mortgage, get on a payment plan to make their monthly utility bills more manageable, and focus on what was most important, healing and ensuring their grandchildren continue to grow up in a safe, stable environment. On Cape Cod, many grandparents step up as guardians. Stories like this remind us that helping one family stay housed strengthens the next generation too. The Neighbors Fund 2025 holiday appeal is underway with a goal of raising $1,500,000 this season. Please consider donating to help neighbors in our local community. What is it? Well, the Neighbors Fund was formerly the Cape Cod Times Needy Fund, and it's helped thousands of Cape Codders and islanders since it was founded in 1936 through the continued generosity of neighbors helping neighbors. Donations may be made online. They're tax deductible at neighborsfund.org/times25. Checks can be made payable to the Cape Cod Time Neighbors Fund, P.O. Box 36 in Hyannis, Mass. 02601. How are the donations used? People in need submit their requests for assistance to the Neighbors Fund, and in turn, the Neighbors Fund pays for goods or services such as heat, electric, or medical bills through a voucher system. No cash is given to recipients, and the Neighbors Fund fundraising drive includes a summer appeal and a holiday appeal. To raise awareness about it, the Cape Cod Times will publish a story every Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday from November 30th through December 31st with lists of those who have donated running on Wednesdays and Sundays. Those needing assistance may contact the Neighbors Fund at 508-778-5661 or 800-422-1446. Again, that number is 508-778-5661 or 800-422-1446. Any questions you have can be emailed to info@neighborsfund.org. And now's a good time to remind you that if you miss any of the information that we share, like those phone numbers or contact information, you can always go to audiblelocalledger.org. It's a fully disability-compliant website. Click on the Listen tab, and you'll be able to catch up on anything that you might have missed. All Reads to the Blind is a podcast and a listening area in our Listen tab, and in there are 150 of our readings that are chronologically listed. So you may have to go through a few to find whichever publication you're listening for, but they are all up there and current. Moving on to the Cape and Islands section. Nantucket to open fund for losses from broken vineyard wind blade by Heather McCarran as we keep it local. More than a year after debris from the broken vineyard wind turbine blade washed onto Nantucket's shores, the town's preparing to open a formal claims process for residents and businesses seeking compensation for damages, cleanup expenses, and economic losses resulting from the failure. The Community Claims Fund, established with a $10.5 million settlement between the island and GE Vernova, which manufactured the turbine blades and other parts, will be open starting January 26th and will stay open for 6 months. Nantucket leaders announced plans December 18th to begin taking claims. The fund is intended to benefit property owners and businesses on Nantucket, Tuckernuck, and Muskeget for documented economic harm stemming from the incident. The approximately 351-foot Haliade X turbine blade, about the length of a football field, collapsed on July 13, 2024, as a result of what GE Vernova officials later described as a manufacturing deviation. Broken fiberglass and foam washed ashore during the height of the summer tourist season, lingering on beaches and in surrounding waters, and prompting an extensive cleanup effort. In the aftermath, Nantucket businesses reported significant economic losses, while the town and others were saddled with extensive cleanup costs. ACK Surf School, for example, had to shut down for at least a week following the failure, according to owner Gavin Norton. Under the settlement with GE Vernova reached last July, Nantucket agreed to create a claims process overseen by a third-party administrator. Verus, LLC, VERUS, has been chosen to manage the fund and evaluate submissions. According to the town, those seeking compensation will have to provide documentation showing out-of-pocket expenses that were related to debris removal or property repair, increased costs taken on to address losses, or reduced gross profits attributable to the blade failure. Payments will be made based on these established losses and the limits of the settlement funds. Island leaders said additional information about how to file claims will be posted to Nantucket's town website, nantucket-ma.gov, in January, ahead of the fund's opening. We're excited to reach another important milestone in our efforts to resolve the harms of this unfortunate incident, said Select Board Chairwoman Dawn Hill. The settlement behind the fund followed months of negotiations after the blade failure disrupted peak season activity on the island and raised wider concerns about the risks offshore wind development can pose to coastal communities. GE Vernova's investigation found that the blade failure was the result of improper bonding of materials in blades that were made at a factory in Gaspé, Quebec, Canada. The Bureau of Ocean Energy Management consequently ordered Vineyard Wind to remove all Canadian-made blades installed on up to 22 turbine generators prior to the July 13th failure at turbine AW38. Those blades have been replaced with blades made at GE Vernova's LM Wind Power Factory in Cherbourg, France. Following a brief suspension, lifted in January of 2025, the Vineyard Wind 1 project has continued to progress. According to the company, the 62-turbine wind development is more than 50% finished, and it's producing more than 400 megawatts of its 800-megawatt capacity. On December 11th, Nantucket leaders announced another agreement with Vineyard Wind that sets clearer rules for communication, public transparency, and emergency response as the offshore wind project progresses toward full operations. Vineyard Wind 1, a joint venture of Avangrid Renewables and Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners, is under construction in waters starting about 15 miles southwest of Nantucket, with transmission cables coming ashore at Covell's Beach in Barnstable. No estimate for reaching full operations has been made public. And there are no other local news stories, so we will move to a different kind of local news, which are the obituaries and death notices listed in that day's Times. And in the Cape Cod Times dated December 24th of 2025, the first obituary is of Anne M. O'Brien of Centerville. Anne Murphy O'Brien passed on December 21st. And was born in Providence, Rhode Island. She passed on her birthday, December 21st. She was the oldest of 6 children. Anne's formative years were spent in Cranston, Rhode Island, and she graduated from Cranston High School, then Pembroke College in Brown University in 1955. Throughout her life, Anne was a dedicated alumnus of Brown University. She was the East Coast chair of the Alumni Schools program and became the first female president of the combined Pembroke-Brown alumni class of 1955. Her unwavering support of Brown earned her a coveted Alumni Service Award from the university in 2012. In September of her freshman year, Anne met John O'Brien, and after graduation, she worked in the airline industry, living in Chicago, where John pursued a training program with ITT. They were married in October of 1956. Anne fulfilled her degree of becoming a librarian when she earned a master's degree in library science from Georgia State University and a master's degree in library management from URI, the University of Rhode Island. She became the director of circulation at the Andover Public Library and was the director of the Pollard Memorial Library in Lowell, as well as the director of the Snow Library in Orleans, Mass., and served on the board of the Harwich Public Library. Anne was named president of the Massachusetts Library Association in 1988 and was named to the Massachusetts Library Hall of Fame in 2006. In addition to her love of libraries, Anne was an avid sports fan, rarely missing any of her son's games. Her special passion was football. She was an eager cheerleader at the many games coached by her son, Bill. Additionally, she was a passionate and dedicated community activist who engaged in countless political campaigns and worthy democratic causes throughout her life. We're grateful to many who cared for Anne in her final years, including the kindness of the Mill Hill residents in Yarmouth and most recently at Harbor Point in Centerville. Contributions can be made to the Family Pantry of Cape Cod and the Foundation for Marisol's Journey. Visitation will be held on Friday, December 26th. That's this Friday from 2 to 4 p.m. at Chapman Funerals and Cremations at 678 Main Street in Harwich Center. A funeral mass will be celebrated on Saturday, December 27th at 11 a.m. at Holy Trinity Church. That's Route 28 in West Harwich. The burial will follow at Island Pond Cemetery in Harwich. The next obituary is of Mary Lou McGrail of Mashpee, who passed peacefully at her home in Mashpee on December 14th, with her husband Jim and dog Penny by her side. Lou was born in Boston August 13th, 1949, and is survived by her husband Jim and many family and friends. A service will be held at Bourne National Cemetery with a private celebration of life to follow in the spring. The next obituary is of Mary E. Brown of Osterville, who passed on Saturday, December 20th. She leaves many friends and family who will gather to honor and remember Mary's life on Saturday, December 27th, in the Joyce Funeral Home at 245 Main Street. That's Route 20 in Waltham, where her funeral service will be held at 11 a.m. Burial will follow in Linwood Cemetery. There are no calling hours. And the final obituary in today's Cape Cod Times of December 24th is of Virginia Helen Germani of Barnstable, who passed on December 22nd. On December 22nd, Virginia Helen Amaro Germani passed away, leaving behind her husband of 63 years, Rick Germani. Born in Essex, Mass. in 1939, attending Gloucester High School, she graduated in 1957. Their story began in Boston on a blind date, and from that first evening, their paths were forever joined. Together, they built a rich and full life, living in Connecticut, New York, California, Texas, and Massachusetts, traveling to Europe, Japan, Singapore, Hawaii, Hong Kong, Bali, and the West Indies. They also shared a deep love of golden retrievers, welcoming 3 into their home over the years, each one becoming an important part of the fabric of their lives. Jeannie, as she was known, was always the first to welcome a new neighbor with a roast chicken or lasagna, along with a handwritten list of the best dry cleaners, butchers, and grocery stores. She started a babysitting service, TLC Sitter Service, caring for both the young and the elderly. In the end, she too would come to rely on the kind of care she had arranged for others. In Austin, she found her true passion working at St. David's Hospital as a neonatal volunteer, cuddler, and hospital volunteer, eventually rising to Director of Patient Relations. Her time there was one of the most special and meaningful chapters of her life. Jeannie also leaves behind her daughter, Laura Caton of Centerville, and many family and friends. The woman with the golden hair will be deeply missed. And that concludes the obituaries and death notices that are listed in today's Cape Cod Times. Now on to some national news, or it's still local since it's about Vineyard Wind 1. Federal action puts efforts on hold, by Heather McCarran. Vineyard Wind 1, long viewed as a cornerstone of offshore wind development in Massachusetts, has been put on hold following a federal order tied to national security concerns, drawing cheers from some and criticism from others. The U.S. Department of the Interior on Monday, December 22nd, announced it's suspending, effective immediately, leases for all 5 large-scale offshore wind projects currently under construction along the East Coast, while federal agencies review risks outlined in recently completed reports. The prime duty of the United States government is to protect the American people, said Secretary of the Interior Doug Burgum in a statement, explaining the action addresses emerging national security risks, including the rapid evolution of the relevant adversary technologies and the vulnerabilities created by large-scale offshore wind projects near East Coast population centers. The decision halts work on Vineyard Wind 1, a joint venture of Avangrid Renewables and Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners, as you heard in a prior story, that's under construction about 15 miles south of Martha's Vineyard and southwest of Nantucket. The project, which includes 62 turbines, is more than half finished. Was already sending power to the New England grid by way of transmission cables that came ashore at Covell's Beach. Governor Maura Healey's office said Monday Vineyard Wind 1 has been producing power since January of 2025 and has nearly completed construction capable of producing 572 megawatts of power. Energy costs are already too high. It makes absolutely no sense for the Trump administration to halt construction on a project bringing more affordable energy to our region. This puts people out of work during the holidays, said Healey. Avangrid did not immediately respond to requests for comment. What other projects are halted? In addition to Vineyard Wind 1, affected projects include Revolution Wind, about 12 miles southwest of Martha's Vineyard, benefiting Rhode Island and Connecticut, Sunrise Wind, about 19 miles south of Martha's Vineyard, 30 miles east of Montauk Point, benefiting New York, Empire Wind, about 15 to 30 miles south of Long Island, benefiting New York, and Coastal Virginia Offshore Wind Commercial, about 23.5 miles east of Virginia Beach, Virginia, benefiting Virginia. Local activists are praising the administration's action, including the Barnstable-based Save Greater Dowses Beach Citizens Organization that has raised many concerns about offshore wind development. All of us at SGDB are celebrating this announcement, said Chair Susan Connolly. We've made so many different arguments over the years as to why these projects shouldn't proceed. I always felt the threat they posed to national security was one of the most compelling. If the action saves our beaches, villages, neighborhoods, drinking water supply, and habitat, we should all be grateful, Connolly said. Barnstable Speaks, another Cape Cod citizens activist group, also endorsed the federal government's stance on offshore policy, saying American interests were disregarded during the permitting, approval, and decision-making process for these projects. They additionally expressed hope all lease areas identified further north in the Gulf of Maine would likewise be revoked. Cape Cod is the site of PAVPAW's radar system and joint base, and on September 11th, our fighter jets demonstrated their rapid response by arriving in New York in less than 15 minutes, Barnstable Speaks noted in an emailed statement. Avoiding permanent structures that interfere with radar is crucial to maintaining our systems. Foreign control over utility companies, influence in government agencies, and local state government is a concerning prospect, the group added. The American public was marginalized in the process, and we hope that those who foot the bill will be given the power to participate in these decisions in the future. On Nantucket, members of the environmental advocacy group ACK for Whales were also applauding the action. Our organization had been primarily focused upon the harm these projects inflict upon our ocean and upon animals, like the North Atlantic right whale. However, there are many other negative impacts from these projects as well. It's very satisfying this threat is finally being recognized and acted upon, said Oliver. Federal officials specifically cited long-standing concerns outlined in U.S. government reports that offshore wind turbines can interfere with radar systems. According to the Department of the Interior, the movement of massive turbine blades and reflections from towers can create radar clutter, obscuring legitimate moving targets, generating false ones near wind facilities. A 2024 Department of Energy report found that while some radar clutter can be reduced by raising detection thresholds, of course, it's technology and it can be adjusted so this isn't a problem, doing so can increase the risk that real targets are missed. State Senator Julian Cyr, a Democrat from Provincetown, said the pause to offshore wind projects under the pretense of national security is reckless and it is transparently political. Vineyard Wind already cleared years of federal review, they survived court challenges, and they're actively delivering clean power to New England, he said. Halting a nearly completed project after losing in court is not about safety, it's not about security, it's an ideological attack on clean energy. He said the move undermines the rule of law, it threatens good-paying jobs, and it destabilizes our regional energy supply at a time when energy independence matters more than ever. Senator Edward Markey and Senator Elizabeth Warren also slammed the pause, particularly as it affects Vineyard Wind 1, saying in a joint statement that Trump's vendetta against American-made energy and union jobs makes our nation weaker, our costs higher, and our families less certain about how they're going to make ends meet, they said. We need all the affordable, reliable, and clean electricity we can get on the grid. We don't need the Trump administration playing unlawful games with our power sector. Both lawmakers additionally demanded to see the classified reports the Trump administration is waving around to justify this bizarre attack on our grid. Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll joined in criticizing the move, calling it ridiculous, noting it's the second time President Trump has tried to cancel an operating offshore wind facility delivering electricity for thousands of homes that's supporting literally almost $1 billion in economic development in New Bedford in the South Coast. And our final story in this abbreviated version of the Cape Cod Times, Trump accused of rape in new Epstein docs. In Washington, the Justice Department released a new trove of 29,000 documents December 23rd from its investigation into convicted sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein, including one in which a man accused Epstein and President Donald Trump of raping a woman he knew. The FBI report from October 27th of 2020 records a call to the National Threat Operations Center. The man said he met Trump as his limousine driver in 1995. On December 24th, in 1999, the man was discussing that experience with a woman who turned stone cold at the mention of Trump's name. Donald J. Trump had raped me along with Jeffrey Epstein, the man quoted the woman as saying. When the man urged the woman to call the police, the woman said, "I can't. They'll kill me." The FBI report redacted the names of the man who made the call and the staffer at the National Threat Operations Center who received it. Trump denied any wrongdoing, hasn't been charged with any crime in relation to Epstein. The Justice Department issued a statement saying the latest release of files contained untrue and sensationalist accusations made against Trump before the 2020 election. And with that, we've come to the end of our reading of the Cape Cod Times for today, December 24th. It's Christmas Eve of 2025. And here at the Audible Local Ledger, we wish you a very, very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. This is your reader, Eric, saying be well, be safe, look after each other. Remember our veterans, especially those we've lost recently. Bye for now.